Hi there, everybody. Live here on Dakota Grappler, John Gums. Got some special guests tonight. One of my, I would say, idols, a guy I looked up to since I was a little kid, and Bill along. But we'll have some fun tonight talking some wrestling, some old school stuff. I've got Nick Storhaug here, rival for many, many years for my dad, and we've had some great stories. Biggest thing that when I was sitting in his office, he says he's a Vikings fan, just like me. And so, so that's one big thing we've talked about, but we're going to talk a lot of wrestling. Again, I'm John Gums. I'm owner and editor of Dakota Grappler, doing this for 20 years, and newest stuff is getting online and visiting wrestling. To me, it's so much fun. I look forward to today and all the different times we get on. We're going to have several people on. Beside me, we got Bill Holton. I'll just have him do a quick intro, and then I'll have Mr. Storhaug. I don't know if I should call him Nick or Mr. Storhaug, but I'll have him introduce himself too. So we got Bill next.
Hi, Bill Holton here from coming at you from Central North Dakota. Just as everybody knows, a big wrestling fan, been around the sport a lot of years, and this is going to be exciting tonight. I'm looking forward to hearing some of Nick's stories and some of the stuff we've seen in the history of our sport in the state.
Awesome. Well, I tell you what, now we have Nick over here. Let's have him introduce himself.
Well, I'm the coach, and I'm sitting in my living room here with my lovely wife, and we're going to talk wrestling, and we're going to have some great stories to exchange and some great history of the sport of wrestling.
Definitely. Well, tell us first your coaching career, where it started, and what year.
Well, I started coaching in '74. I graduated from the Mayville State, which I'm very proud of. We had a wrestling program, and I was better than a forfeit heavyweight. I was a football player. I lettered 4 years as a captain of the football team my senior year, but wrestling was kind of like it's always been a sport to stay in shape to play football and other things. So I began in Lisbon here as assistant coach 1 year, and then I took over. Lisbon wrestling was pioneered really and kept alive. H.K. Uland was a Hall of Fame coach and a basketball coach, and he started a wrestling program for many years. I think HK coached for 10 years. And then Rodney Anderson started it back up again because at the time we were diminished in numbers and not a lot of kids, but Rodney deserves a lot of credit here to keep our program going. So that was the start.
Okay. What is your first recollection of wrestling yourself? When you were first introduced to the sport?
Well, I was first introduced to the sport as a sophomore in high school. And a bunch of your peer group says, "Hey, Nick, you should go out for wrestling," and I did, and I wasn't too good. None of us were very skilled or anything. Our coach, HK, he liked to keep us in shape, running wind sprints and being in shape and being in condition. We worked out on the stage in the elementary school. Of course, in its day, we worked out in the rifle range at the Armory. We didn't have much of a facility, but we still produced 26 state champions, a couple state championship teams, and many place winners. So facilities didn't matter, but we sure didn't have what we have now as far as facilities. And wrestling was a sport. It was a sport, and we gradually, I think, elevated that sport to being what it is today, which is what you've made it with publicity and stats and coverage. So it's come a long ways.
Yeah, definitely. So think of those first matches you had. What are the things you remember hopping on the mat, and do you remember some of even the competitors' names you had?
Well, we used to wrestle Jamestown, and they had the Wall Boys. They were very, very strong. I think that was probably my first match. And there were some tough kids. Valley City had Bob Marsh, Swampy. He was a heavyweight. We, of course, if you could do anything at all, you'd get out there in the upper weights and wrestle. I guess it was very different. You had riding time. You had a lot of different things. You don't have that today. So very basic, and it was wrestling.
Definitely. Now, here's a couple stats that I think back of. Now, Nick is in both the North Dakota Hall of Fame for coaches, and then you're also in the High School Coaches Association, which is a little bit different. You're a couple different Hall of Fames.
Right.
And when you think back of your coaching career, who would you think were your biggest rivals in the years?
There's no doubt we had the Big Four in North Dakota. It was Lisbon, and Napoleon, Watford City, and then Carrington, but not at all times. Carrington had a down time in its wrestling program, but it eventually came back. Al Larson was a magnificent man, and I knew him very well. Al brought that program to a real height in Class A, and it tailed off for a while, and then with coaching and program, it came back. So those were the big four, and then you can't forget about the Velva Aggies. I mean, Mike Norland and the Velva Aggies were absolutely one of our big rivalries, and between those are the big schools. I said four. There's actually four of our competitors. We are five.
Mm-hmm. It's been a lot of years, but do you remember how you used to plan for your practices?
Well, I'd always have note cards, and I'd always write things down, and I'd always take care. I mean, I would always miser on time. I don't care. You can only keep your attention span so long, and we were always in that practice room for a limited period of time because you can only get so much use out of a thoroughbred. I know some of our best state championship teams the 2 days before the state. Of course, we'd have our workout in the morning with running and that, but we were very refined and very organized what we do. We wanted to work very hard and be for the moment in the practice room, and when practice is over, I would always tell the guys, hey, this is the most important thing we're going to do for the next 45 minutes or 60 minutes. But after this time, you go home, you take out the garbage for mom and dad, you do the chores, you become a person. And that paid dividends for us in the end. Quality is much more important than quantity.
Yep, definitely. Bill, you got any first questions? I got a ton of them.
Yeah, I bet you do. So I'm taking you actually grew up wrestling in high school in Lisbon?
Yes.
And then went to Mayville State and came back to Lisbon.
Yes.
Who was your coach at Mayville State?
My coach was Lloyd Wilson.
Okay.
Lloyd was from the cities. Lloyd taught us a lot about wrestling. We had a fairly good group of wrestlers. Les Jackson was from Indianapolis. He was a national place winner. And so we had some good quality. We had some good guys to wrestle. Of course, I was the upper weight. I was better than a forfeit. So I got thrown into a lot of situations, but I learned the sport. I learned a lot.
Did you think of going into teaching and education and coaching right away, or?
Yes, I did. I graduated in Mayville State was a difference between me and being on the farm or doing something else. I have a Bachelor of Science degree in business education and physical education, so coaching was the thing. And I coming out of college, I thought, wow, I want to be the football coach, but wrestling kind of just tugged at my heartstrings. And once we got going with it and dedicated to it, it became my life and my passion. It was a great thing, a great career.
Yep.
I loved every minute of it.
Okay. Now, I always kind of think of things in a different perspective. Now,
Right.
Do you have, let's say, your first defining moment as a coach? What kind of set you apart? What put you on a level where you wanted to be the best? Some kind of defining moment. Is there anything?
What I wanted to be the best, I guess I looked at state championship teams. I looked at good programs. I looked at mentors. I looked at my peer group. I remember being at the state tournament when Napoleon and Watford City, they faced down for the state championship. And I think Napoleon, they defeated Watford. They came in first. I think Watford City won the first. And Frank will forgive me for this. I think they won the first 3 state championships. But then Napoleon, down in Valley City, Napoleon pulled it off. And I thought, wow, what a great rival, what a great sport. All these kids were out there, well behaved, and looked persnickety. Wrestling has always attracted me because of all the sports. It has an appearance rule, it has rules. It's a classy activity. It's not like other sports. I mean, you can watch things now that get you very, very disgusted, whether it's the NFL or professional hockey or whatever. Wrestling has decorum, and the other thing that wrestling does, it sets these young people up for life. If you can, Dan Gables once said, if you can wrestle, the rest of your life is easy. So that's that's what's really drawn me into it. And in Lisbon, we started with the bare basics. I mean, we send out letters to say, hey, do you think these people would come to a match tomorrow night? And we started with bare bones, and eventually people got interested in it, and it just took off.
Yeah. Do you remember your first assistant coaches?
Oh yes, yes I do. Uh, Johnny Johnson, Johnny's still around today. Al Ralston was an assistant coach for us, and of course Harlan Volk, who I
Mm-hmm.
have much respect for. Harlan was not there the first year, but came in and after being an 8th grade basketball coach in Lisbon, he became our junior high coach for many years, and he did very well. Harlan and I we're very close, and we're very close in nature, not a crossword, and about 30 years of coaching together. His sons Rod and Rodney are great wrestlers. The whole family is very good. So
No, great wrestling community. I have a hard time getting out of Lisbon when I go down there because you talk a lot of wrestling. Yeah, it's pretty
yep,
awesome. Great community. Love it.
yep. Well, we're supportive of our wrestlers, and that's the way communities are, because everyone that has a wrestler out there, it's a family or it's a support group, and it's a whole support group that makes it really different, really good.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was great. And you mentioned the Volks, a few years ago when they brought up the Apple Valley team came up and wrestled at the Storhaug tournament, and we had the Randy's boy wrestling, and that was really a lot of fun. Kind of a lot of history. It just really meant something. It felt right. It was really a neat scene.
Yep, and it was David and Goliath, because Apple Valley, the rulers of Minnesota wrestling and nationally ranked, and they put their wrestlers out there, and all of a sudden you got Blake Bosch, this 126 pounder from South Border, and he goes out there and wins a championship. And I believe that the guy he defeated in our tournament won the state the year after. So I mean, David and Goliath, wrestling it's the fairest sport there is too. Absolutely.
Yeah, actually, in that tournament, they had Seth Gross, who's won a national championship at the NCAA.
Right.
He wrestled 132 there, and you had Mark Hall was in the tournament. He's won a national championship, and they're both ranked number 1 in the country this year. So, it was a pretty neat deal.
Well, our tournaments is all it exemplifies, and if you looked at the big coaches that I know, Bert Gums and Mike Norland and Frank Fish, Al Larson, the contemporaries, the people that are excellent. Ordinary people do ordinary things extraordinarily well. That's what wrestling's all about. If I can do a cross-face cradle, I'm going to do it, and I can teach the guy down the road to do the same thing, but I'm going to do it. My team's going to do it better, and you'll do it better by repetition and just stressing that fact. It's a real basic sport. And when we get down to our tournament is a great tournament because everybody's sitting at the table, the score table, whatever. They have either wrestled, been a parent of a wrestler, they've been around the sport, and that's what makes it happen.
Oh, once a wrestler, always a wrestler.
Always. Yep.
So true.
Yep. Stick with the basics and you're going to win. If you want to be flashy out there, maybe you should become a pro wrestler or something else. But we have witnessed in Class B wrestling some really dynamite athletes, dynamite coaches. I respect them all and have a great amount of respect for them. I've learned from them. I mentioned that experience. I went to Valley City in 1972 to watch that state Class B tournament, one of the first ones there was, and everything about it just impressed me. Hey, wrestling is quite a sport.
Do you remember the crossover when Class B separated?
No, that was probably about the time when I was in college. But the coaches would talk and they would say, yeah, well, my friend Frank Fish would say, yeah, when they separated us up in Minot, they put the Class A over in the corner, over here. It wasn't the premier event. Now, I'm partial to Class B. I think Class B is the exemplary event. I mean, it's outstanding.
I love the fans. Class B.
Yep.
I get goosebumps every time that semis comes around or even think about it.
Oh yeah, it's very good. It's very good. Yep. They're dedicated because even growing up, when going through my coaching career, we used to have 42 or 43 Class B wrestling schools, and every part of the state would have outstanding talent. If not a team, you'd have outstanding individuals. I mean, Walhalla has the Luciers. I mean, the most premier wrestling family in North Dakota. I mean, every school, every vintage of wrestling had outstanding wrestlers, so the interest was high.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I remember the Jamestown Civic Center, yep. and in the state Class B, because that dominated for many years where that was located, having it all by themselves. And they had the best announcer, and I don't know who that was. I wish I could get the name, and I might have to. When he said Walhalla, and coming around, it was pretty good.
Yep, and he did the Napoleon pronunciations, because nobody from Napoleon's Thompson or they're always Weigel or
yep, not a Weigel or Weigel definitely, or Piats. They needed the names right, definitely.
Oh yeah, yep. We've appreciated all of our competition. We have no enemies. I think one of the things that started us on this goodwill tour of wrestling, and at the time, I mean, we were Lisbon and we were to Carrington and wrestling a dual meet. Well, I remember this fact very well. It was a Friday night. It was snowing. It was a blizzard. We got our kids on the bus. We went to Carrington. We might have gotten beaten a duel. I don't care. Even it was a good match, whatever. But Al Larson says, okay, we're going to feed your team here. The boosters are going to feed your team. I've never forgotten that, because that act of kindness has kind of set the tone for what we do in Lisbon here. We respect all wrestlers. We respect the sport. We treat everyone with dignity. We fear none. We respect all. I mean, so it is a tremendous sport. Things like that have always stuck out in my mind. You bet.
I find that interesting, because I remember being down at the Lisbon tournament, and as our kids were getting on the bus, they were all handed a sandwich as they were getting on that bus that day. And it's pretty cool that's kind of that's more likely where that idea came from, right?
Yep. Well, for sure. I mean, acts of kindness are always going to be repeated, and that sets a tone. I mean, we're all humans. We all love each other. We all want to get along with each other. But in wrestling, we're going to compete and we're going to do the best we can. But once it's over, it's over. And wrestling is such an outlet for young people's energy. I don't know that I'd want to live in a town if there wasn't a wrestling program or a football program or any program, because that's what athletics is all about. You got to have a release for these young people and all their energy they have. And wrestling is prime. It's kept a lot of people on a straight and narrow. A lot of young people owe a lot to the sport of wrestling. So
yes. Do you remember taking in your kids to camps along the way, or any national tournaments going with coaches?
Yes, absolutely. We went to Bismarck. Brady went to Bismarck lots. Our youngest son Tyler went to a lot of tournaments. Yep, absolutely. Yep, great experience.
Well, he didn't get a mention because we were talking about this before, but I talked to Brady, your son, one of the better refs around. I've enjoyed watching him, and like I mentioned, he came up to introduce himself when I know who he was, but it was kind of one of those days where he just wanted to make sure, just in case I didn't know, which was cool. He was really nice. Hoping to visit with him some more. Where is he living right now? Right in Minnesota?
Brady lives in Golden Valley with our daughter-in-law Jan and our two grandchildren, Elizabeth and Nicholas. And he works in computer security sales. He's right in his house. And he refs a lot of the Twin Cities wrestling. That's his deal. Minnesota's a big wrestling, state, and the Twin Cities are a wrestling hotbed, really.
Definitely.
Yep.
Well, I might have to back up and get about half of your face, Nick. Just a little bit. You might want to. There we go. There we go. We're talking to your ear a little bit.
now we're in.
There we go. Oh, perfect. Okay, a couple more big questions now. Maybe this is a little bit on the personal side, but I don't know. Some people knew it, but Nick got hit by a car once.
Right.
And we had a long discussion not long after that. And tell us how faith and just some of the strengths you have to keep going, because that was a testing time in your life.
It really was. I was walking. I like to walk about 2 miles a day. And I was walking about 2 blocks from my house. And in small communities, when there's no sidewalk, you'll always walk facing the traffic, so you don't want to get hit. and I got hit by a car from behind, and in an instant, I was on the hood of a car basically, and my whole life passed before my eyes. And basically, you say, what am I going to do? Am I going to live here, or is this the end of this place or this earth? And I end up surviving, but
Yeah, you did.
but not without a life flight to Fargo. And I have a titanium right hip. My right hip has been totally reconstructed. My right hip's been replaced. Both my knees been replaced. And in this injury, I had a punctured lung and fractured skull. I have about 70 surgical stitches in my left eye. And the thing that wrestling has taught me, and athletics in general, of course, this was the biggest hit. I played football in college. This is the biggest hit I ever had in my life, because I was a sack of potatoes that went thud onto the hood of a car and then onto the street. But what wrestling has taught me is every day you have to make an improvement, a little bit of an improvement. Don't ever give up hope, because every day that you breathe, every breath you take, you can give up hope. My hope started when they took the breathing tube out, and then I got to know my doctor. Ironically, one of my doctor's assistants was Sean McDonald, and Sean McDonald wrestled for Kindred, and so Sean and we got to know each other really well. My orthopedic surgeon's done 6 surgeries on me, so wrestling taught me that, hey, I can do this. I can do this, and I can do this very well. I can get better. I can walk again. I can breathe. I can do all the things that I used to do, and I basically have. But I don't know that I would have been as successful if I wouldn't have had the experience. Basically, what happened is when they scraped me up and put me in that helicopter, I was not the coach any longer. I had everybody in the world sending me get well cards and calling me and saying, you can't give up. You can't do this. You can't do that. So the roles reversed, and athletics taught me a lot. Just every day, if you can get a little bit better. It started with taking the breathing tube out. It started with putting the titanium hip in. Then I came home. I started
One step at a time.
One step at a time. So many people think that their life is going to be in big steps. It's going to be in small steps. And we're not promised tomorrow by any means. Make the most of every day and be thankful for it. Never tomorrow is never guaranteed to anyone. And my life is totally changed because of that, my attitudes and everything else. I think Frank Fish had a T-shirt. He says that we gave him a T-shirt. I usually send out T-shirts after my tournament, and after he heard that this happened, he wore it every day until he realized that I was going to be okay. And we talk about that because we are peers, we are friends, and
family. Yep.
Yep, we are family, and we keep going. So I came through that, and I'm very thankful for it, and very thankful for every day I have, because it could have ended right then and there. But athletics will teach you that and a lot of other things.
What is that perseverance done for your business? Because I don't need to get into your business, but I know that your business side of it, I'm more wrestling here, but you haven't coached for a lot of years, and you've become a very successful businessman. Part of that's with hard work. You know that.
We started a business in my basement. In fact, I used to, do accounting until wee hours of the morning and then get on the school bus in the morning and go to wrestling. But my business has grown from the basement of my house to, being a multi-county, pretty large CPA firm. I've bought in three practices and joined one. So, we've just exponentially just done very well. But all of that didn't happen without work and leadership. So hard work, that's what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
If wrestling teaches you one thing, you don't have to be a NCAA championship champion to benefit from this. It's just take every day, work hard, improve, and know your limitations, and have some self-discipline, and the world can be yours. So many people don't understand that. Wrestlers have it. We have the appearance rule. We have, you have to watch your weight and watch your diet. There's so many things about it that are teaching you about life and for life, that's why it's so valuable.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, well said.
Yep. Well, tell us about your first state championship team. Let's go to that.
1978, well, let's say that we started my first full year of coaching. I was told that Lisbon was going to become a class B, which we were Class A before that. In Class A, I was assistant. We went to Valley City and had the regional tournament. And I think in the regional tournament, we sent one kid to state. I believe that would have been 75. And that was Terry Kirchnavy. And I think he scored 3 points. And I know we outscored another team that had 2 points. So we got to witness the Bismarck powerhouses, and very, very astonishing fact. And I think that first state tournament that we were at, I think Carrington and Al Larson, I think they took second place, which is a great feat for them. Once we turned Class B, we just kept climbing the ladder. In 76, we had, I think, 4 state place winners. In 77, when we were in Class B, we had 2 state champions, Mike McDaniel and Rod Quall. Both of them are going to go to the NCAA tournament with us and with our group, and we were pretty excited about that. We took second place. We took third place. We got edged out there. And then 78, everything rolled together with us, and we scored 181.5 points. And
was the state record for many years until Napoleon later.
Yeah, well, I think Napoleon was a year after, but we want to rally for getting some recognition for that team, because back then there were 12 weight classes. There was no seeding. And I don't know, I think there was, I call it the Truman-Kingsley rule. The Truman-Kingsley rule came into place when, used to be in these brackets, if you lost your first match, basically you were done. And I was on the advisory committee, I think, for 6 years. And we changed that so that they had wrestlebacks. And then eventually they had state seeding. And then eventually we had our state dual meet tournament, which we rallied for. I know that smaller schools were kind of against the state dual, but, talk to Barry McClary and your dad about that. Napoleon, I think, won 7 dual meet tournaments, and all the more power to them because they had the program, the coaching, and the kids. So it's worked out pretty well.
Definitely. Tell us some names on that 78 team.
Well, our 98 pounder was John Aberly, John Aberly. Our 5 pounder was Tom Aberly. John took third. Tom took state championship.
It's amazing. We've all just paused for half a second. It's amazing how it just comes to you, just like it was yesterday. It's awesome.
Yesterday, Rod Quall won 3 state tournaments. He took first, second, and he got second as a senior. 19 was Scott Elrod. He took 4th. The Sowolds were tough back then. 25 pounder was Joel Mullenkamp. He took 5th. Joel came back this last summer for a 40-year reunion. He looks like he did when he walked off the mat. 32 is Randy Dick. Randy was a multiple state champion. He lost to Spurley in overtime. That was a great match. I remember that. 38 was Mike McDaniel, high school All-American, 2-time state champ. I think he won every match he wrestled his last 2 years. And he pinned Jason Bruins, who was a freshman, in the state championship. That was a real classic case. Many people will go back and see that 38-pound bracket. Mike, as a senior, had to wrestle the state runner-up his first match, and then he wrestled the state championship his second match. So as he progressed through the tournament, matches got easier. At 145, we had Terry Kirchnavy. Terry was a state champion, hands down. In his junior year, he had wrestled Pearson from Bowman. He was ahead in that match 10-1 and ended up getting beat on a second period. He got caught on a takedown on a near fall. And then Pearson was very renowned underneath for doing a Peterson roll, and he Peterson rolled us, and we ended up losing the match 11-10. That was a tremendous match and one that we'll never forget. And to this day, we always admire Terry because there was no throwing a headgear or anything like this. He was up on the stand and let everybody know that he took second. But in 78, our 155-pounder was Jim Hitter. Jim, you'll remember at the New Salem tournament, he pinned Jeff Nagel. And Jeff was a senior and a great wrestler. Jim came in as just a greenhorn freshman kid, and he ended up winning that New Salem tournament. That was great. Our 167-pounder didn't wrestle in the state tournament. Roger Mansky and I were best of friends today. We are dear friends and friends of the family. Our 185 pounder was Dave Wallach. Dave weighed all of 160 pounds, and he wrestled 185, and he took third place in just a phenomenal event. Dave is very involved in Minnesota wrestling for Apple Valley, and his son was a fairly good wrestler. Our heavyweight was Danny Holmstrom. Dan didn't place that year, but you'll remember Dan because I think the year after, Dan upset Brian Blasick, who was a great heavyweight for Dakota, and we upset him, and that was our tournament.
That's great. That's so that is just brings tingles to me because I go through with my dad's teams, and that's what I looked up to too.
Yep.
I remember sitting at the Jamestown Civic Center, and they'd have to put Lisbon, Velva, and Napoleon and separate them by a couple teams because it was such a rivalry. They have to put them on opposite sides of the gym.
Yep. And then we'd walk out for this. We'd walk out for the introduction. The opening of the state tournament. And you're young. You're light guy. Your 98 pounder would have that stick that have Lisbon and Velva and Watford City, and you'd line up and you'd sing the national anthem. Yeah, it was a very good time for wrestling.
Yep.
Dick Schindler was our North Dakota High School activity secretary. Dick was very good. He was very good. He was on the National Rules Committee. He was very good about keeping our tournament what it should be.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yep.
No, you don't need to go through every team, but what other state championship teams did you have in that era?
Well, we only had two, Billy. We only had 1983. We won the state, and that state tournament that was a tough state tournament. That was we won we had 99 points, and I think Lytton had 92 and a half. Oh, wow. That was a real tough tournament. We had only 4 state place winners, a number of kids that scored points, but that was a whole different experience. And it was the same way all year. We won the New Salem East-West by 2 points, and I think we won every dual meet that year. But it wasn't a cakewalk because Danny Dyke's Lytton team, they were right there, right chomping on your heels. And what was outstanding about that state tournament is Mitch Elijah, who was a 98-pound senior, he won the state, and Jeff Aberly won his first of 2, or that was the second of 2 state titles. Jeff was part of the Wrestling Aberleys, and if you're talking about Lisbon wrestling, we just recognized the Aberley families on our tournament. There have been 6 Aberley state champions, and for a family, that's outstanding because 2 of Jeff's sons have been state champions. Jeff was a state champion twice, and John, and then Tom, very, very successful.
That is awesome too.
Yeah, actually, a lot of those names you listed off on that 75 team or 78 team. I mean, I was wondering, did any of these families ever leave Lisbon? Because there was a lot of those names you recognize from the.
Yep. Well, the second, we're into the 3rd generation now, but that's what wrestling is. It's a very family orientated activity, and it is what it is.
Well, it took a long time for Lisbon to get back on the stand to be on the top, and I tell you what, they have some great wrestlers, and it takes a lot of hard work. Parents and coaches committed to doing lots of things to get to that level.
Yep, absolutely.
And they've got a lot of guys in the room. They do right now.
Yep, we do. We have the facilities. We have the gym. We have a good place for a tournament, and we've utilized that. Our region has held its own. We have to be thankful for our region. They don't have maybe the Edgeley, Ellendale, Collins don't have the participants, but they keep their program alive. And they're very, very valuable to keep wrestling going. Lemoore's got 17, 18 kids, and they're all very competitive, very good. So, and Corey over in Oaks done a nice job. Oaks dominated wrestling here, for a time. They're still a wonderful program. So it's all worked together. So
South Border is right in the mix with Lisbon this year. That's the same region.
Yep. Josh has done a wonderful job. South Border is coming on like gangbusters. I mean, just an outstanding team. And to watch South Border wrestle with the skill and technique, and they're renowned. They're going to push Lisbon to the umpteenth degree, but that's good. That's competition's what it's all about. We never once would build a wrestling program by just sitting back. We would go anywhere, anytime to wrestle the competition. That's what you had to do. Bismarck Rotary. My cousin, who's like my big brother, used to be over in Norwood. We went to the Norwood Young America Tournament to wrestle way back when. That's what you have to do. Build your program.
Lisbon goes to that Wahpeton early tournament, which has Minnesota teams and South Dakota teams.
Yep. That's been a good one for us. You can't just rely on patsies. If you're going to get better, if you're going to be the man, you better beat the man, and in a respectful way in wrestling. That's the way it is, and it's worked out. That theory has worked out really well.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
What kind of advice would you give to a younger coach getting into the wrestling programs right now?
I would say if you want respect, you better give respect, but you're going to have to earn respect. Too often the coach thinks that it's automatically, everyone's going to worship them or fall by their feet or whatever. You have to be respectful of young people, and that respect is earned. It's earned in the way the coach acts, the way the coach's decorum is, and the way the coach treats everyone as individuals. I wouldn't be talking to you. I wouldn't be in the Hall of Fame if I didn't recognize those kids that walked down the hallway all had moms and dads and lives to live and problems. You have to relate to young people today. But more than anything, they're not going to respect you unless you respect them, and you earn that respect by doing that and treating them well. There are many athletes that don't go out for anything because they don't have the mentor or the encouragement to do it. I know that's happened to a lot of schools, and I think even our football program at times, the football team walking around the school that isn't out for football could beat the one that's out there. So you have to be a recruiter, and you have to earn that respect. It's not going to be given. No one's going to give you anything these days, and I learned that a long time ago. So that would be my idea.
Oh, I did something different. I clicked on something. Whoops. Get the big get the big picture of me on there. There we go.
There you go.
No,
I've been looking at space here anyways.
That's okay. No, I tell you what kind of hobbies do you have right now, Nick? I know a long time ago you sold your Harley. What are some things you do outside?
Well, we'd love to travel. My wife and I have been to I think 19 countries, and we love to travel. We love our grandchildren. I golf once a week. I maybe want to golf twice a week. We hold Minnesota Vikings season tickets, and yes, we are Minnesota Viking fans. No matter what the result or what the disappointment is, you either are a fan or you aren't a fan. I think we're more a fan of watching athletes perform and watching the game. After having our son was a fairly good football player, both sons were very good football players. One at the North Central Conference. We like to watch that. We like to watch football.
Well, I tell you what, got Patrick Rolson made a quick comment. I appreciate it. Thank you out there, Rick. I met Patrick out there. Can you catch that on your side? He says,
Wayzata or Lakeville at the Storhaug tournament in the near future. I think Lakeville North is signed up. I don't know about Wayzata, but our opportunities are open. Yep, absolutely. Yep, we'd love to have you.
And if people are listening, feel free to throw questions out there. I think some people are a little shy to do it, but I've left it wide open. People make comments sometimes, and then we'll flash them up on the board.
Okay.
No, it is pretty cool to see people out there. These broadcasts get anywhere from 20 to 30 different people live at different times, but then over the week on Facebook alone, it gets 500 different people watching them.
Okay.
The last few have averaged at least 39 minutes of watching time, which is pretty good. And then these are stored over on YouTube. If somebody wants to catch them later,
they can watch on YouTube.
You betcha. They can all go over to Dakota Grappler. They just have to type Dakota Grappler YouTube, Dakota Grappler Live. They'll find them out there.
That's good.
Yep.
That's good.
And I've got Bill on a side journey. He's going to try to get these put into podcasts type things, and we'll visit about that sometime so you can listen to them and not have to watch our faces.
Yeah, I have a face that's made for radio.
Yeah, me too.
We'll make
Nick, I've got a question. I know you've been around the sport a long time and been to, who knows how many state tournaments, if maybe all of them, I don't know. Give me a handful of guys and they outside of the Lisbon program, but because we know there's a lot of those that have come, maybe a couple inside of the Lisbon program that have really stood out to you over the years.
Well, we're saddened. We were saddened to, Jason Wagner and and your fellow there in Carrington that was tragically killed in action. They were the dynamic duo. There's no doubt about that. There's no
Yeah.
doubt about that. You know who I'm talking about, Wagner and Jason.
I'm trying to think of what his name was now. He graduated in '88 too. He's one of my gosh, I've got Lance
Koenig.
Yep.
There would never be, in my estimation, they would that twosome would rival anyone in Class B wrestling. That would wrestle Lance and Jason Wagner. I mean, that's Murderer's Row right there.
Yeah.
A couple of very, very good kids. Our Pat Rostick has become really good friends with Lance's family. I think throughout the years, we might have beaten them once or twice, but they were outstanding wrestlers.
Well, Pat's the only Lisbon guy I've ever lost to. I did tie a Lisbon wrestler once though.
Yeah. John, you were probably wrestling Todd Anderson back in about the 4th grade.
Yep.
Sure.
Very true. Todd many a times.
Yep. When it comes to Velva, they had the Nichaparenkos, the heavyweight Nichaparenko and his brother Rick and James. They were horses. They were top notch. And then you had you had some great wrestlers for Velva. I mean, very, very Kellner, very good wrestlers. Then you go to Napoleon and you go to the Piazzas and unbelievable, very, very good wrestlers. All very good. Watford City had Jason Bruins. Jason Bruins was a sophomore or freshman when he wrestled Mike McDaniel in a state championship. He won a couple states. Very outstanding kids. I missed a majority of them, but when you talk about outstanding wrestlers and families, the Luciers from Walhalla were a dynamite family. All the state championships and the state titles there. The Luciers were incredibly talented. And you go to New Salem and you have the Nagels and Huck, the heavyweights. They were tremendous. The two brothers, the middleweight brothers, Pazernicks, outstanding wrestlers. And there's some Dolls and some other New Salemites to fill in there. So, incredible wrestlers, incredible guys.
How about some of the coaches you got to know over the years?
Well, Dennis Freestead is a great friend. I coached against Dennis in JV football. Dennis is a tremendous competitor. He's a tremendously gifted coach. He loved the sports, all he did. I mean, Dennis is a guy that if he was going to put together a crossword puzzle, he wouldn't quit until it's all done. He was a perfectionist. What he did it very, very well. Dennis was a good guy. He was always good to us. He was good to us in the sense that he knew that Lisbon was up and coming, and sometimes he was going to take his lumps, but it never mattered. He very true to the sport of wrestling. I miss Dennis a lot. Other than that, we knew your father very, very well. I knew Mike Norland very well. Mike was the thing about our state wrestling tournaments, you'd go in the coach's room or you'd go in the start of the tournament, and you could tell which coaches are wearing cowboy boots and which ones are wearing, street clothing or normal shoes. And it was always a classic. Dennis Talley was a coach at Newtown. Talley was a character. We loved to see Dennis. He had some great teams and great wrestlers.
How about Dan Imdyke?
Dan was a good man. Dan was a great official, good guy to be around. I went to NCAA tournaments with we're talking about Dan Unruh and Dan Imdyke. Dan Imdyke's a great coach. Dan was a great football coach, but he was very, very good wrestling coach. He got his teams ready. He put the best guys on the mat. I mentioned our '83 team. Linton was always there to challenge us and to hold us to a high standard. Dan did a lot for the sport of wrestling. Absolutely.
And Unruh, he refed my finals match my senior year.
Yep. Dan was devoted to wrestling. Unny was a classic storyteller. was fun to be around, but he was a great official. So was Rodney Anderson. Probably between Rodney and Unruh and Bud Smits, I don't know that you'd find any better officiating crew anywhere. Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah.
No, I miss some of those guys. There's a lot of those guys, are not with us anymore.
That's right.
It's great names to bring up.
Yep, they are. Yep, gone but not forgotten.
Hey,
Definitely.
one guy that kind of pops into my mind that I see quite a bit on the college side is Jim Makovsky. He's the coach at Mankato.
Yep.
Was a Wahpeton native. That was probably somewhere in the time when you were coaching, I would assume.
Yep. Jim probably wrestled for Wahpeton, and then and he wrestled at Valley City State.
He coached at Valley. Yep.
He coached at Valley. Yep. He's done very well down at Mankato.
Absolutely. Yep. Good program.
Good program. He's done very well. You bet. Yep.
No. So who you going for in the Super Bowl?
Super Bowl. I think I have more attachment to the Midwest and Kansas City than I do in the West Coast. But it's a good young coach that San Francisco has, and of course we have the mustache walrus in Kansas City. But Mahomes is a great quarterback. He's a great athlete. Whenever you see a quarterback that can run 30, 40 yards for a touchdown against any defense, it's that disheartens a defense. Yep.
I'm just glad Green Bay's not in it.
Yeah. you and I both.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
Most overrated operation in the world, I think. So.
Yeah. No, so what are you plan on being in Fargo for the state wrestling tournament?
Absolutely. I'm going to take Friday and Saturday off, and I'm going to be at the state. And we have a bunch of us oldies. We're renting a bus, and we're going to New Salem on Saturday. So.
Oh, okay.
Oh, great.
One day tour to New Salem.
Well,
So,
I'll be in Aberdeen. My son will be wrestling down there, so I've got to go to Aberdeen, or else I would be in New Salem. I probably wouldn't miss it because it's going to be a great tournament again.
Yep. We're looking at our oldies bus. Maybe we'll pull up by the Holstein and have a team picture taken up there. And
love to see it. Get your wife, email it to me.
Yeah, I think that's what we should do. New Salem we were in the first New Salem tournament back when their facility we always called it the barn.
The barn.
That was a roof shaped like a barn. And, but it's come a long ways. Dale Beckman, Dale is a classic man, a great guy. And he's served the North Dakota wrestling very well. I mean, it goes without mention, the coaches and the people. And Dale's one of them.
Well, He's always been really quiet around me. He's a guy I got to get on here. I'd like him to open up and tell us some stories there too.
Yeah. Well, Dale was a great high school wrestler. He won a state when it was all one division and down in Hettinger. And Dale is a man that, his actions speak louder than words. He's always been a gentleman, and what a program he's produced as far as the quality of his wrestlers have been just excellent. Yep. Absolutely.
How about the NCAA? Now we talk college wrestling. You planning? I kind of heard you're going to go with your son.
Yep.
Minneapolis.
Yep. We have 12 tickets. We have a group organized, and Brady has 4 tickets, so he has his own invitees, and we're going to go. We selected. Well, I try to invite people that are just going to be able to sit down and enjoy wrestling because it's not going to be. It's very. How am I trying to say this? Restricted. You're just going to go to watch wrestling because there's nothing else going to happen. And I think it'll be a classic. It'll be a classic watch. The NCAA tournaments we've been through before, it bears what we hear, and that is ordinary people do ordinary things extraordinarily well. The basics are what matters. You'll see pigtail matches end with a 3-2 overtime decision, and it's all about doing the normal basic things and doing them exceptionally well. And that's what our young people and our coaches got to be reminded. Do the basics, do them well, and you're going to win or succeed. Life is no different. Doesn't matter if you're doing 750 tax returns or coaching that Bronco wrestling team or in practice or whatever. Do it well, and you'll be rewarded for it. And
no shortcuts.
No shortcuts. There are very few shortcuts in life, and NCAA is like that. Fortunately, with cable TV and all these matches, we're able to watch and preview some of it, and enormously a compliment. Here we can see at the NCAA tournament wrestlers that Mark Hull was in our tournament. And you mentioned Billy mentioned that other wrestler.
Yeah, Seth Gross. Yep.
Seth Gross. Yep, was in our tournament. So you get to know someone, you get to attach to them and watch them wrestle. So
well, I don't know how I couldn't go with a group that wanted to do something else, but stay there. I can.
Yeah.
So
Well,
you pick the right group then.
Pick the right group and pick people that, hey, if you're going to sit with them, you're going to be watching wrestling for 8 to 10 hours a day, and then you're going to be talking about wrestling the rest of the time. I mean, Steve Johnson is our superintendent. He's a good friend of mine.
Yep.
We go to state tournament in Minot, and it's 3.5 hour trip. And his teenage daughter, will be in the back seat, and his daughter will say on Monday morning after the state tournament, you know, Mom, these two talked wrestling for 3.5 hours because that's in your blood. That's what we've done. I mean, in North Dakota is its own fraternity of wrestlers and people who've done the sport. Absolutely. Yep.
There's going to be a group of North Dakota people there. You're going to see a lot. It's going to be awesome.
Oh yeah.
I'm glad it's close. There's a lot of times you don't get the opportunity to go there. I'm trying to convince my son, but he'd have to take final tests, and he doesn't want to do that. And you don't have this opportunity very often. I think it'd be worth it, but he doesn't want to take finals. He's thinking.
The NCAA's we were to before one was in Ames, Iowa, and then the other one was in Iowa City. And the thing you found out going to Iowa is the 80-year-old grandmother sitting behind you has forgotten more about wrestling than you know. And very knowledgeable people, and they're very, very persistent and very. It's a great experience. Absolutely. You bet.
Well, here's what Bill has done for me, and I'm kind of hogging that part, but Bill has turned me into watching more college again this year because I had to bone up. I was kind of, how could you say, a part-time fan. I knew all the good wrestlers, but now I'm digging in deeper. I knew my team. I always knew my Iowa guys, but then after that, I'd be stretching. And maybe Penn State, top guys, maybe a few Ohio State, but I tell you what, every time Bill talks and he starts just rambling names, I'm amazed. Amazed what Bill knows college-wise.
Once you attach to a wrestler, I mean, when one of our tournaments, we knew the Ed and Lou Bannock, the Bannock brothers. That was tremendous watching them. One of the Bannocks wrestled Dr. Death, Steve Williams, in the finals. That was exciting. So we got to attach to the wrestlers and we got to see them. And the thing about wrestling too is it's unfortunate, but this is the way we attach more to the heavyweights than we do to these lighter guys because the heavyweights are more characters and more characteristic, even at the high school level. If the heavyweights, they can be 8th graders, they can be unskilled and not that good, but people love to watch them. And,
and the
NCAA was like that. Of course, the NCAA tournaments we've seen, Thab Thacker, this guy from North Carolina, bless his soul, he's probably overeaten himself to death, but he was like 485 pounds. And so you'd watch Thab wrestle, Ed or Lou Bannock, and that was a thrill. But there's more than enough athletes to go around to the NCAA's. Believe me, it'll be great. Absolutely.
So, do you have a favorite team on the college side?
Not really. I'm not that big. I'm not that much of a fan. But the East Coast and Penn State has really hogged it. It would be nice if it came back to to an Iowa team, but we'll have to see that. I would say the Central America, the Iowa, Oklahoma, but I don't think the Oklahoma teams are doing that well right now.
No.
I kind of on the side like some Minnesota guys, in Nebraska, I like to see a few studs from Nebraska do well. Again, it's Central America.
Yep. Rutgers is coming on out in the East Coast. Rutgers is I've seen a little bit of Rutgers wrestling Penn State, and Rutgers looked really good. So upcoming.
Yeah, they've really built a good program there. They've kind of built a wall around New Jersey. If they can keep the New Jersey kids home, they're going to be really, really tough. Just because it's a great wrestling state. It's kind of, I was listening to something with Jay Robinson here the other day, and he said, that when he came to Minnesota, that's what made him take the job. There was not another D1 program in the state, and he just said, hey, if I can keep the Minnesota kids home and sprinkle in a couple other guys, we'll contend for national titles. And I think, Rutgers has made that same, same effort, and they've done pretty well.
Yep. Well, look at the talent that's flowed out of North Dakota. I mean, we've produced some really good Division I wrestling talent over the years for a state of 600,000 people. hey, the Steiner twins, I mean, look at the talent we produced in North Dakota. We've done very, very well for our population. So
Yep.
North Dakota wrestling is not, we see that in our Storhaug tournament. We get, yeah, well, Apple Valley's going to dominate, but we had Greenbush this last weekend, and Greenbush, yeah, they've won their sectional or whatever in Minnesota, but they're dog eat dog over here. They're just an ordinary team. So North Dakota wrestling is nothing to scoff at.
No, we're blessed. Wrestling is very strong right now.
Yep.
One other question now, something new probably for you. Girls wrestling,
Yep.
women's wrestling. What are your opinions and a little bit on that?
Well, if it's women on women, it's fine. At the collegiate level, a gender against gender, I think it's fine. At the collegiate level, I would look at it as an attribute to the school, a way of getting students and getting good
students. Emerging sport, yes.
Yeah, it's an emerging sport. I don't see anything wrong with it, as long as it's competition against competition, and in the Title IX arena, in the making things equal is good, but you shouldn't have to force it to be equal. I mean, inequality shouldn't be forced to be equal. If it's done right, I don't have any problem with it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'd be a great thing, and I'm involved in my small college, Mayville State. I foresee it as a boost to a university. I don't see it as being a problem.
Right.
Not at all.
We're all in the same boat.
What I'd really like to see is some. I think there's an opportunity possibly for a program like a Mayville State where it gives it a chance to bring in a women's program at the same time. Let's get the men's program restarted, and I think that can help. I mean, you get a school like Mayville State that's obviously an enrollment driven college, and they could bring in 20 women and 20 or 30 men. Right. That's 50 more students that are getting an opportunity to go to Mayville State, and
I said that's the same thing for Valley City to bring it back.
Valley City would be obviously another one.
It's a teaching school, so teachers perfect opportunity.
Yep. If I'm the dean of students, or if I'm the president, and I'm going to recruit a wrestler, I mean that's pretty darn good, because I know that this person has had discipline and order and rules, and they're going to be a good citizen and a good student. I mean, I see nothing wrong with that. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Yep. I think it could be a growth for a sport, and like I said, if it brings back both programs, I think that's great. I don't have a problem with it.
What has Lisbon done as a community to be so successful, keep their numbers and their school up, and it's kind of been a progressive little town? Do you have it?
Yeah, it has. We have a good school. We have good facilities. We have good coaches. We have good coaches in our school. John Aberly, served as a coach back when. Joe Kern, our coaches now, have done very, very well. We feel happy about that. But as a town and as a rural community, agriculture in North Dakota, yeah, we hear about all the distress signals in agriculture, whatever. We're producing in agriculture. We're producing record crops, and that's helped keep our farm economy going. We have Doosan, the Bobcat right down the road. That's a huge economic engine in our community. And then we also in our community are able to keep our hospital and our nursing home caring for the elderly. That's a big thing in North Dakota. In North Dakota, our future going forward, we're going to have more than half the state over the age of 65.
You need to have those services. Yes.
Yeah, got to have those services. The other half's going to have to take care of that. So that's kept us going. I mean, the quality of life is everything in rural North Dakota. And
so keeping a hospital, keeping a clinic, keeping those opportunities.
Absolutely. You got to keep the services. Retail is a dime a dozen. We have more retail space in America than anywhere else in the world. So you see the Shopkos and these stores, the big boxes are closing up. Even in Fargo-Moorhead, you're seeing retail closing up because everybody's on Amazon. Everybody's having home deliveries and doing that. So that the thing has changed. And the big asset we don't realize about small communities, here we are sitting here tonight doing this wonderful conversation about wrestling, promoting our sport. And it's technology that you're in my living room and I'm in your living room. So it doesn't matter where you're at. You can have a successful business with technology. My growth area in accounting could be, my accounting base could be all in New Jersey.
Yep.
I can do those tax returns just as easily there as I can here. So technology has really made our everywhere viable to do business in. Yep, absolutely. So we're blessed in rural North Dakota. We are very blessed to keep everything going. But things are changing.
Yep.
And if you can change and stay ahead of that curve, provide the services, and then provide the education for your
Yep. Have a good school system.
Yep, your school is the heart of your community. Absolutely, you bet. Yep.
Well, I've seen in Lisbon, that, and I think this is, probably part of the answer to John's question, is the culture of wrestling is really in the fabric of that community. And when you're in the stands, and I've been there, obviously for the Storhaug many times, and as well as took some youth teams down there for some youth duels, and all of the everybody that you're surrounded with they are wrestling people. Right. And so that has something that was built over many decades, not years, decades, and it's really in the fabric of that community. And so just like Nick's talked about, the community itself has remained strong. So in that, right. So wrestling has built and remained strong with it. If the whole town was dwindling and dying, wrestling would suffer too. But as that town continues to thrive, wrestling will thrive.
Right. Well, the difference in wrestling is you have an alumni base that's very extraordinary. It keeps moms and dads and grandpas understand the sport. Understanding it is a big part of it. And any encouragement. The breakup of a community, the breakup of a state, the breakup of a nation is a breakup of the family. And it's a sport that needs encouragement because, the biggest thing you have to do as a wrestling coach is make work fun. If it weren't fun, nobody's going to come in your wrestling room. I mean, you got to make it fun. Get on the bus and go and compete and make it fun. Encourage the kids and reward them and, say that this is a life skill. Life is, like Dan Gable says, life is easy after wrestling. Everything else is easy. So, yep. And our community is a lot to be proud of. As far as wrestling, we don't overwhelm our school as far as the athletic program being all about wrestling, but it's successful, and it's because of family support and tradition. The tradition allows it to be very successful.
Well, I tell you what, they've had great track teams over the last few years too. Lisbon's got some runners. I pay attention to all high school sports, and they've been very successful.
Joe Hall is a classmate. He's since retired. The program has had an excellent facility and an excellent run. The tradition's been very good, and thanks to Joe and thanks to a lot of dedicated people, we have a track, and it's worked out well. And Lisbon wrestling too. You can judge it if you judge our program by the number of state championships as a team, we're gonna fall short of a lot of others. But if you judge us on a history, we're far and away above. Mm-hmm. We're far and away above being the most successful. But again, we can't take that for granted. We have to achieve every year, every match, and for every individual. You bet.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, we're at our hour point, and I really appreciate everything, Nick. I've missed you the last 2 summers. I've stopped by, and you've been gone both the last 2 years. So I'll make sure I catch you again this next summer coming out. Yep. I always love visiting with you.
You bet. Bring your golf clubs, John. We'll golf. Bill,
okay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate and respect and love Carrington Wrestling, and we maybe tonight on a heavy heart remember the Lance Koenigs and Jason Wagner's of the world. I know Dr. Ron Wagner was a great supporter of wrestling. He's right, and I love them all dearly. Taught me a lot. We respect our neighbors and love them very much, and we love the sport of wrestling. Absolutely.
Yep. Dr. Wagner was my son's doctor when he was born after.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yep. My oldest. Yep. Know him very well. Great man too.
Oh, wonderful doctor.
Oh, talking about someone who was passionate and loved the sport. Yeah.
Yeah, he really did. Absolutely. He diagnosed me as having shingles once at New Salem, and helped save my eyesight. Yep. He said I had a runny, mattery eye. He said, "That's shingles, Nick." And I we immediately got help for it, so it worked out well.
That's and it's such a small world when it comes to wrestling.
It is.
It is.
Yep.
He lived in Carrington for many years, and we all have connections. So that wrestling family, definitely.
Yep.
Well, Bill, any last words?
No. I just, once again, Nick, thanks a lot for coming on. It was, that's some great stories, and obviously, the state's better because of Lisbon wrestling, and Lisbon wrestling is better because of you. So it's been really a treat, so yeah, I've really enjoyed this tonight.
Thank you very much, you guys. You've done a lot for the sport, and I appreciate it very much.
No, anything to promote the sport. That's kind of been, for some reason, there was a turning point in my life when I said, guess what? That's what I've meant to do. So just, and it does make a difference.
Absolutely, guys. Yep.
Okay.
All right.
Well, you have a great night. We're going to be on again now for everybody else watching. Bill and I might be on sporadic now and then, more often between now and the NCAA Division Ones. Whenever Bill wants to get on, we're going to try to still do 2 times a week, mostly Sundays and Wednesdays, but you might find some surprise shows in there. If Bill says, hey, let's just talk some wrestling.
We've got a little something going on this Sunday. I don't know. It might interrupt our show. There's a football game, I guess, but I'd rather talk wrestling, but whatever you want to do.
There's a little bit of Super Bowl. That's true, but we can go earlier, we can go later, we can go Monday again. We did, because we skipped last Sunday. I have no problem with that.
I think the only thing I would say is there is some great wrestling coming on in college this weekend. Minot State, Northern State duel up in Minot. And University of Iowa, they've got a wrestling team. They're wrestling Penn State this weekend. So there's some really exciting things happening. The biggest Class B team B tournament between now and the state tournament will be East-West this weekend. So we'll have a lot of fun, and there's a lot of stuff to follow. And so whenever we can.
Little stat for 20 years, about 20 years straight, the number 1 and number 2 teams in the East-West end up 1 and 2 also at the state tournament. Now, might have switched around.
I was going to say they didn't always end up 1 and 2 that way.
But there was some switching, but those you could very much defend that those are the ones fighting it out.
Unfortunately, we were on some of those number 1 teams at East-West and number 2 at state, so I know how that went. But,
okay, definitely. But just enjoy it. Again, guys, get out there. I'll be in Aberdeen. If anybody in South Dakota saw this, come visit me in Aberdeen. We're talking to a guy that does some of the broadcasting down there, and he's got some ideas for me to do more live wrestling matches. And so you never know. I do have some equipment, but you never know. I might have a lot more. So Bill and I in the future will be very busy.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, Lee Wolf, great tournament in Aberdeen this weekend too. So, go out, watch some wrestling. Have some fun.
You betcha. You guys have a great night. Dakota
Thanks,
Grappler.
guys.
We're out tonight. Thank you.